Good afternoon. We'll start our afternoon session. I suppose I should start off by saying that I am obviously not Derek Mackay. My name is Susan Aiken. I'm the local government convener of the SNP, and I'm filling in for Derek this afternoon. Derek did say yesterday that he is now the party's longest serving business convener. That means that he's not as young as he once was, and he has to take a wee break every so often. However, you'll have noticed over yesterday and this morning that Derek's traditional iron discipline has been in place, keeping speakers to time and making sure that we get through the agenda and get all the debates covered. So I hope that conference will agree that we should continue in that vein, and that we'll try and make sure that we can take as many speakers as possible and get through our agenda as quickly as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to Resolution 14 on rural education. I'm going to call Fiona Sarwar to move, to be followed by Bill Munsey to second the resolution. And Fiona is a first-time speaker at conference.
Yay. I needed that sympathy clap. Good afternoon, conference, and thank you for allowing me to speak today about rural education. Living as I do in the idyllic patch of earth called North East Perthshire, a little bias there, has many advantages, not least the chance to campaign for Mr. John Swinney. And campaign we did. May's victory was a hard-fought one for many of us, and it was with real pride and anticipation that I watched the new cabinet announcements. I'm sure with the same excitement that some would wait for the Scottish Cup draw. The Deputy First Minister's appointment as Education Secretary was a clear indicator of the importance that education was being given, but also for me, the assurance that something very close to my heart was being placed in a safe pair of hands. Yesterday, the Education Minister, as well as Jenny Gilruth and others, spoke passionately about closing the attainment gap for every young person in Scotland. I noticed too how, quite rightly, there was a focus on the close relationship between poverty inequality and education inequality. Conference, when we think about schools that are struggling, schools that need help to close that gap, we might not automatically think about schools in our less populated areas. However, many rural schools are facing challenges that will just as significantly affect a child's ability to learn and excel. In Scotland, 1/3 of our schools are classified as rural schools. Of course, just because so many of our schools share this one label, it doesn't make them all alike in their challenges. Indeed, the challenges facing some of our smaller schools are complex and not easily solved. In 2015, one newspaper reported that there were 20 primary schools across the North East Highlands and Islands without a permanent head teacher. A further 190 teaching posts sat vacant. In a conversation with the head teacher of my own local primary school, she said that staffing shortages were one of the biggest challenges that she faced. Conference, a school in the Highlands and Islands, as well as other rural areas, is the heart of the community. Sometimes even the building itself is at the very centre of the community. In my own school in Stromness on Orkney, the dining hall where we ate lunch on a Monday to Friday doubled up as a popular wedding venue on a Saturday, and then the church hall on the following Sunday morning. In 2013, the most remote primary school on the mainland opened a new campus in the Highlands which it shares with the local fire station. The head teacher also has a double purpose as a reserved firefighter. Now that's a head teacher who demands respect. Innovative thinking and the pooling of resources is essential for the survival of centres of education in our more remote regions. I was privileged to recently attend a graduation at the University of the Highlands and Islands through Perth College. I'm sure many of you will know that the UHI has made huge advancements in allowing people to go on to further education and vocational qualifications without leaving their local areas. Conference, I believe facilities like the UHI, which reaches across communities up and down Scotland, joining folk in Orkney with others in Inverness or Perth, through the use of VC and other digital resources will be essential to ensuring the survival of our rural populations and the centres of education at the heart of them. But Conference, I would ask today, are we doing everything we can to help smaller schools attract and maintain sufficient levels of staff? Are we doing everything we can to make teacher training accessible for those who are already living in rural communities? What about someone who wants to transfer from a career in science and engineering? Perhaps someone facing redundancy from the coal industry, wanting to transfer to a career in teaching. Is it appropriate for them to go back to university with no salary to support a family in a setting removed from the rural school they wish to contribute to? Just like that school campus, which also houses the local fire station, we must be flexible in our thinking, innovative with our solutions, and determined in our commitment to protect rural schools and the communities they serve. Conference, I ask you today to please support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona, and you were well within your time as well, so you've set a very good example for the rest of the afternoon. Bill Munsey to second, to be followed by Christine Graham, MSP, to move the remit back.
Afternoon. Observation of a first-time speaker for such a nice bunch of people. You look pretty scary from up here. Conference. Yesterday you heard John Swinney, our MSP, Deputy First Minister and Cabinet Secretary for Education and Skills outline his clear, unequivocal and complete commitment to addressing the attainment gap in Scottish schools. The debate yesterday quite rightly highlighted some of the challenges faced by schools in deprived urban communities. As a party, our commitment is to closing the attainment gap across Scotland. And to achieve this, we cannot and should not focus solely on schools in urban areas. There also needs to be a strong and clear recognition of the specific issues faced by our rural schools. The majority of rural schools provide a high standard of education and have a family feel. This is highly valued by pupils, parents and teachers. But we also need to recognise the unique circumstances faced by our rural schools. These challenges can be very different from, but just as testing as those faced by schools in urban areas. One of the most important of these challenges is recruiting and retraining staff. It is intrinsically more difficult to recruit staff to rural schools. And where staff shortages do exist, rural schools will have a smaller pool of staff to cover them, so staff shortages are much more difficult to manage and have a much greater potential to impact on teachers and pupils in rural schools. Fiona outlined how at one point in the Highlands and North East, 20 primary schools were without head teachers and nearly 190 posts were vacant. The councils affected suggested the cost and availability of housing and the remoteness of rural areas can act as significant deterrents to recruiting and retaining teaching staff. So action is needed to address this. First, to help with recruiting teachers to rural schools, special effort needs to be made to attract people living in rural areas into teacher training. Key to this is the availability of distance education and to allow people in rural areas to undertake teacher training and offering teacher training placements in rural schools. Once qualified, attracting teachers to work in rural schools would be helpful to ensure, and this would be helped by ensuring affordable accommodation as well as assistance to resettle themselves and their families. When recruited, the focus has to move on to retaining teachers. Continuous professional development is valued by all good teachers. This can be difficult to access from a rural location. This would be assisted by CPD being offered online and focusing on issues of interest to rural schools like mixed-age classes. When staff shortages do inevitably occur, they need to be managed. Unlike schools in urban areas, rural schools can have difficulty accessing supply teachers because of the travelling time involved. Paying for travelling time, and in the case of longer-term vacancies, making accommodation available would seem well worth considering in such circumstances.
Okay, that's time, Bill.
Secondary schools face unique special other challenges. Teachers usually have a specialism, but they can have two specialisms. But at the moment,
Final
many
sentence,
don't.
Bill.
So they really need to be helped to develop a dual specialism for rural schools. Conference, I urge you to embrace the bold and imaginative vision outlined by this party and John Swinney on behalf of our government and support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a card in to second the remit back, so I'll require a formal seconder. Okay, we have a formal seconder. Christine Graham, and could Hazel Gardner be ready to speak next, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. And as I chair the Parliament, I better keep to my time. I have a great deal in sympathy with this resolution, a lot I agree with, and indeed with the speakers that have just given your reasons for this motion, but I don't like the second paragraph. Look at it. Conference notes that staff shortages in rural areas can contribute to poor attainment. Now, I kind of stumble over that. I've got 48 plus primary schools in Midlothian South, Tweeddale and Lauderdale. They're all rural. They all do well. They all have high attainment. The teachers work very hard. And if there are any shortages, they work with it. Their biggest problem is the school itself. Some of them are not in very good state. So I would not like this conference to endorse something that says when a school has some difficulties recruiting staff, it will necessarily or may very well affect attainment. I don't think that's true. I think our primary teachers in particular are better than that. The second point I want to make is this. So they're absolutely right in their first paragraph, that they're the heart of the community, they work within it, they live there, they have their own children at the school. That's why they go that extra mile quite often. But I've got a suggestion, apart from looking for the remit backs, it comes back with better wording. One of the big problems, I know when I first taught, was to go into Galloway. And they had key workers' houses there. So if you need a GP, a policeman, a teacher, they had key workers' houses that you moved into for a year or so till you could find somewhere else to live. Because it was impossible to move from Edinburgh to Galloway and commute when you had nowhere to live. So one of the big problems when you're offering a job is we can give you a key workers' house till you find somewhere for yourself. There are solutions. But I ask you at the moment to take this back, notwithstanding what the movers have said, because, frankly, that middle section does no service to our primary teachers, not in my constituency, if I may suggest in Scotland. Thank you.
Okay, Hazel Gardner to speak in favour of the motion, to be followed by Scott Simpson.
Conference, thank you for the second time today to speak on behalf of this motion. The reason I want to speak on behalf of this motion is because I have 26 years teaching under my belt, and 12 years of that has been in small schools. And I want to speak to you today about the challenges and delights of multi-composite teaching, which is all too often faced in these small rural schools, and island schools as well. I teach on the Isle of Arran, but I've taught in Dumfries and Galloway as well. Multi-composites mean that a teacher can be faced with a primary 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or, in the case of some of the really small schools, a 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And maybe a bit of the nursery as well. So there are really special skills that are involved here. It takes a lot of time to get used to all the different plates that you have to juggle, and it takes a lot of time to develop your craft, and every teacher has a craft. Every teacher is utterly devoted and works well over the amount of time they're paid. But we do that because it's a profession, because it's something we love, because it's something we value, because we're dealing with the children and the children's future and their chances. So I want this motion supported because I want people to understand that there are special circumstances in the rural schools. They're the heart of the community. They're also the community's future. And if you invest in specialist teachers in these special circumstances, then you produce some amazingly talented people who come out of these situations. So what I'm asking you to do is to support this motion. It might need layers of management. It might need creative ideas over several schools working with one head teacher. But if people are prepared to change the roles, which they are prepared to do in the small schools, and if they're prepared to give the children all the chances by being creative with their work time, then what we get is excellence across Scotland, across the board, an equal chance for all. Please support the motion. Thank you.
Scott Simpson, who will also speak in favour of the motion, to be followed by John Cumming. And Scott's also a first-time speaker at conference.
Thank you very much, Conference. Well, school, most of us have been to one, myself included. In fact, I went to school in the rural Northwest Highlands, and I finished just over 2 years ago. Yes, I am actually that young. Anyway, it's a small school compared to other schools with around 250 students, which to me is actually quite big, considering it's about 5 times larger than the village I'm from. Due to the school's small size and rural location, it is hard for schools like mine to attract teachers, and as such, it isn't able to offer courses other students take for granted. I once met a student in a school in a larger town in the Highlands who at the time was studying for a higher in Russian in this school, yet my school was only able to offer French, Spanish and Gaelic as languages. As a result of having to teach myself, I'm now able to speak a bit of Russian with ease, yet I wasn't able to actually sit the exam in my school. Languages, however, are only one area though. STEM subjects, which are having trouble recruiting teachers nationwide, is a problem that is exacerbated in rural areas for the reasons I outlined earlier. And now, as a student of theoretical physics at university, I meet students frequently and ask them, oh, what are you studying? Why are you studying that? And they often say, oh, it's because something I was quite good at and enjoyed in school. Subjects such as psychology, philosophy, German, which economics as well, subjects that I wasn't given the opportunity to study at school because we weren't able to get the teachers for these subjects. Surely as a country and as a party of government, we want every young person to have the best possible future in life. By supporting this motion, we'll be able to make steps in ensuring that high school students are able to make the most out of their time in high school, unleash their full potential, and in turn, help develop our great country further. Thank you.
John Cumming, who will speak in favour of the resolution, to be followed by John Mowat.
Good afternoon, Conference. For young people in Scotland's rural areas, they are as engaged, intelligent and as ambitious as students in urban locations. And like students who study in an urban school, they too should have access to the best quality of teaching. Now, unlike some of the other speakers, I myself don't attend a rural school. I attend an urban school in this very city, and there I can see what good teaching can do. Good teachers are there to inspire pupils, to motivate them, and to make them the very best they can be. And children in rural schools should have the same access to the same kind of teaching. When the First Minister appointed John Swinney as Cabinet Secretary for Education back in May, it became clear just how serious this government is about improving education. Now, of course, that's not to say that Scottish learners are failing. It is quite the opposite. This year's exam results have been the best ever the new system has seen, with a record number of pupils heading to university and thousands of others heading into further education or employment. And for those who do decide to go to a Scottish university, they will begin their courses without the burden of tuition fees lingering in their minds. This is further evidence which shows that young people can achieve anything they want to, based on their ability and willingness to learn, and not their parents' income. However, there remains a whole lot more to do in terms of improving education in Scotland, particularly in rural schools. There are very few newly qualified teachers who are drawn to rural locations, and this subsequently puts children in these areas at a disadvantage. We need to attract not only newly qualified teachers, but we need to attract the best teachers to these kind of schools because we need to help them understand that teaching in Scotland's rural communities and in rural schools can open up a whole new degree of rewards that teaching and being part of Scotland's rural communities can bring. The Scotland which we all dream of is one where no barriers are in place to a person's success. We have to do more to attract the best teachers to rural schools to provide some excellent quality education, which has already been provided in Scotland's rural schools, but there has been more of it. We need to attract the very, very best teachers this country has to teach in rural schools. Conference, I urge you to support this resolution so that we can ensure that there are children all across Scotland succeeding in every area of our society. Scotland's rural communities have so much to offer in terms of economic prospects. We have to capitalise on that. We have to capitalise on these young people to ensure that they can succeed. Thank you very much.
John Mowat to speak in favour of the resolution. John, I can give you 2 minutes. And if the movers of the remit back and the resolution could be ready to sum up.
Yeah, John Mowat, I'm from Orkney. I started life in North East Caithness in a single teacher school, and I taught for 40 years mostly in Cutwell Grammar School in Orkney. I chose to do that. I had a good job as a head of chemistry and sciences. I had colleagues in Shetland, the Western Isles, other parts of Highlands. We chose to live and work in rural parts of Scotland. Small rural schools are a strength. They're not a weakness. The teaching in rural parts is different from in cities. You have to make your own support networks. You have to use what is available in the community and such like. Staffing can be a problem. Supply teaching can be a problem in rural areas too. However, in rural areas, it is also possible for rural schools to target good quality hires. In my case, it was in physics and chemistry and sciences. You could also get local people to train as doctors, as nurses, as engineers, as classroom assistants, as whatever. And once you get local people coming back to their own local areas where their extended families are, they are much, much more likely to stay. We had also mention of teacher training now is available through University of Highlands and Islands. You can do it in Orkney, in Shetland, in Western Isles, in Thurso, in any of the campuses. And we are finding adults who've been doing other jobs for 20 years who are now training as technical teachers or teachers in other subjects. So it's really a case of using our strengths, working together, target good performance in schools, and also inspections in small rural and island schools need to be sympathetic and helpful and not negative, because you're not going to get the same things happening as you will in an urban primary. Our rural schools are a strength.
Okay, that's
Keep them,
time, John.
support
Thank
them, and please support the motion.
Thank you. Christine Graham, MSP, to sum up for the remit back, and if Fiona Sarwar could be ready to sum up for the resolution.
Can I say, and direct you again, don't to be pernickety, but I will be, you're not voting on the speeches, you're voting on the resolution, and focus on that second paragraph. One of the speakers actually said, good teachers are not attracted to rural areas. We cannot have that implied. There are excellent teachers across the rural areas. Many people are attracted there because it's a rural area. The problems of teaching in rural area are quite often simply practical. Somewhere to live, transport, issues like that. Certainly not the quality of the school. I'm not saying that everything's wrong with this, but if you pass it, you are inferring that in rural schools there is not the same level of teaching, not just in the North East or the Highlands, but throughout Scotland as there is elsewhere. I don't want my constituents in Midlothian South and across the borders to be contaminated by that. Our primary teachers in particular are excellent wherever they are teaching, so remit this back, come back with a better resolution which deals with the issues which were addressed in the speeches but not in the resolution. Thank you.
And Fiona Sarwar to sum up for the resolution.
I was really hoping to only be up here once. Yeah, I just want to say that the motion states, with respect, that staffing shortages can contribute. It in no way seeks to undermine the excellent job that our teachers do, and having grown up in rural schools, the excellent investment that I personally have received. This motion seeks to support... This motion seeks to support teachers and advocate for them. It's the very reason that I wanted to write this, was after meeting with my head teacher. My local school didn't get a great report recently, and we're in sort of measures to try and do that, and I was speaking with the head teacher, and this was just an issue that she raised with me. I wanted to bring it forward for that reason. Yes, we need to look at housing. Yes, training and specialist help. It is very much about those practical things. We tried our best to write it into the motion. This was our first attempt as a branch, and we're very much learning. Conference, we must protect our rural areas. Historically, they have had too much taken from them already. Let us now give back. Please support rural schools. Please support the motion.
OK, Conference, we'll move to the vote. We'll take a vote on the remit back first. So can I see cards in favour of the remit back? OK, and against the remit back? OK, the remit back falls. Can we move to the vote on the resolution, please?
Right, OK, so take it again.
OK, if we can take it again, can I see cards for the remit back? And cards against the remit back? No, the remit back definitely falls, Conference. We're going to move to the vote on the substantive resolution. Can I see cards in favour of the resolution? And any cards against the resolution? The resolution is overwhelmingly passed. Thank you. Okay, we now move to Resolution 15 on a consumer-friendly energy market, to be moved by Callum McCaig MP, and if John West could be ready to second.
Good afternoon, folks. There's lots of you, and it's wonderful. This is the second year in a row that I've been stood up by one of my parliamentary colleagues when I've stood up to do a parliamentary double act. Angus MacNeil was due to second this, but he is opening the mod in Stornoway, which I think is a fair excuse, unlike Kirsty Blackman last year when she just missed her flight. She'll be here somewhere. I hope she's heard that. If she's not here, can someone feed that back to her? Scotland, as you will all know, we are blessed in terms of energy potential. And that potential, for a lot of the way, has been realised. Not necessarily to the best use of our people, and that's something that I hope this resolution can change. For the last year at Parliament, I had the dubious pleasure of shadowing Amber Rudd and Andrea Leadsom. Yes, indeed, as they took the hatchet to Scotland's renewable energy. Onshore wind, solar, biomass, all cut. Industries that had the potential to flourish and bring down costs substantially whilst cutting our carbon emissions were sacrificed on the Tory altar of austerity at the same time as we are putting billions and billions of pounds at a much, much higher rate into nuclear power. Now, you may ask yourselves why, and in what other ways is our energy potential constrained? Well, last year also saw the closure of Longannet Power Station, largely because of the iniquitous transmission charges, which meant that if you produce electricity in Scotland, you have to pay to put it onto the grid, whereas if you produce it next to London, they will pay you to put it on the grid. I have real concerns, Conference, that unless we declare energy independence from the UK, then that we will not see new thermal generation happen in Scotland. We will not have the capacity that we require to supplement the enviable position we have with renewables without an end to the transmission charging regime, which the government at Westminster is unwilling and seemingly unable to turn around. But we can do better. We absolutely can. We absolutely must do better. If we have our own energy system, we can build a system that works not just for our people, but for our planet, with wind, with solar, offshore wind, biomass, hydro. Along with some storage and potentially some backup gas, we have the potential to have a viable system that works for our country, not for others. That is something that we must seek to achieve. It's there for us to take, and I think if we can pass this by acclaim today, we will have that system where it will work for our country much better than it has under remote control from the Tories. Thank you very much.
John West to second the resolution, to be followed by Bill Robertson to move the remit back.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks, Callum. The Hinkley nuclear power plant, which now appears certain to go ahead, has been guaranteed an electricity price of £92.50 per megawatt hour for the next 35 years. To put that in context, over the last 5 years, the highest day-ahead baseload price was £62.90, a third less. The current energy price is around about £40 per megawatt hour. The UK government is guaranteeing a massive nuclear plant double the current electricity price for 35 years, adjusted for inflation every single year. To put that into perspective in terms of renewables, Dong Energy is currently building 2 large offshore wind farms, offshore wind projects being traditionally one of the more expensive forms of renewable energy, for a guaranteed price of £62 per megawatt hour, significantly cheaper than Hinkley. We've been told that this massive nuclear white elephant is necessary to keep the lights on and to keep the bills down. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. This is a government vanity project in a dangerous industry that will burden us with hundreds of years of radioactive legacy, which will have to be paid for by our grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren. The UK government, thank you. The UK government has been shambolic in terms of energy in recent times. The Contracts for Difference Round 2 auction, which was supposed to award contracts to renewable suppliers over the next few years, was meant to have been completed on the 21st of October 2015. The date hasn't even been announced. Major projects are being stalled, cancelled and abandoned. 12,000 people in the UK have lost their jobs in the solar industry alone. Thousands of projects are at risk. And the Parliament has warned their own government that if we don't take action on carbon capture and storage, it's going to cost us £1 to £2 billion per year in the 2020s, leading up to £4 and £5 billion a year in the 2040s. This kind of inaction, abolishing DEC while the Brexit department expands exponentially daily, is madness. We need a coherent Scottish energy policy, and we need Scotland to have control of our own energy policy so we can make sensible decisions for the future. Thank you, Delegate.
Is Bill Robertson there to move the remit back? Okay, Bill, I don't have a card in to second the remit back, so I will need a formal seconder for this. Is there a formal seconder for the remit back? Okay, I see one at the back. Okay, Bill, if you go ahead, and if Lorna Finn could be ready to speak next in favour of the resolution.
Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, conference. At National Council on St Andrews Day in 2002, I seconded a Bruce Crawford's electricity generation discussion paper, Reach Our Green Energy Potential. This was an engineer who had previously been employed in working on design and installation of nuclear fuel handling systems, and latterly on Hunterston A. This was before I realised the vast problems associated with nuclear waste disposal. But as I seemed appropriate at the time, I stated it was appropriate for me as an ex-nuclear engineer to second this motion, a gamekeeper turned poacher. The way I attacked this discussion paper was to be able to prove that our long-standing policy of phasing out nuclear power stations was sound, and we had sufficient non-generating nuclear capacity to meet our peak demands and to have adequate standby capacity. At that stage, we had 16% spare non-nuclear capacity and a 13% if the East Coast grid was upgraded. However, the recent closure of Longannet, a 2,400 megawatt station, has based that we no longer have sufficient baseload power to cope with our winter maximum demand of about 6,000 megawatts. So you can see that we are short of capacity. Wind won't meet it because it's too intermittent. So the other one was to examine our targets for renewable energy and to prove that they were realistic and within what our grid could cope with. And at that stage, they were. Now, I stated that in Denmark, when the grid capacity of wind power reached 20%, the grid experienced troubles and instability, and that we were adopting a prudent measure of having a 15% wind capacity. Now, but even at times of high wind power generation, we get this strange situation that constraint payments amounting to millions of pounds are paid to wind farm operators not to generate. Now, that is ludicrous. So the motion states that damaging transmission charging regime that financially penalised electricity in Scotland led to the premature of Longannet power station. The transmission charge was 40 million, but Longannet was faced with 160 million EU carbon taxes, and that was the real reason for Longannet closing. I agree with the part of the motion that calls for further development of new low-carbon generation in Scotland, but query the part that states and calls for the Scottish Government to develop plans for an independent Scotland, a balanced network to ensure Scotland's energy needs are reached. How on earth can we get an independent, balanced network be achieved with such an imbalanced load on wind power capacity? Conference, I move the remit back.
Lorna Finn to speak in favour of the resolution. And apologies to speakers, other people who've put in cards. I'm afraid Lorna's going to be the last speaker we're going to be able to take in this debate. And Lorna's also a first-time speaker at conference.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends. Conference, I was lucky enough to work within the renewables industry, and I have seen firsthand the potential that we have to grow and develop and progress our nation's goals around climate change and clean, green energy. The Scottish Government has set one of the most ambitious climate change targets in the world, and we need strong investment in order to meet those targets. Conference, the Paris Agreement on climate change will become law in November of this year. 79 of the 197 member states have ratified the agreement. Theresa May has made it known that the UK will follow 3 of the world's largest polluters, India, China and the USA, in ratifying this agreement at the end of the year. In conference, the Prime Minister's commitment to this will be welcome, but we must hold her to account and make sure that she upholds this commitment. Given that her past regressive energy policies, you have to wonder whether the Tories really have a desire to tackle climate change, or if this is just grandstanding on an international stage. I would like to repeat some of the words of our First Minister yesterday. We are one of the wealthiest nations on earth. We are rich in natural resources. We are world leaders in life sciences, technology and renewables. The early removal of renewable subsidy has a long-term damaging effect, not only on our economy, jobs and the industry, but on our planet. Our future is a renewable one. and one that we are one of the very fortunate nations on this earth to have natural resources that support a renewable future in abundance. Investment in a new generation of nuclear power at the expense of low-carbon, cleaner, greener alternatives only further indicates the divergence of political ideology between the Scottish and UK government. We have the potential to be world leaders in renewable energy. The removals of subsidies does not only turn off investment, it has the potential to suppress innovation. We must invest in the future, in energy storage technology that will allow us to maximise our output potential, in developing new and more efficient ways to manage our energy needs. We will ultimately move away from a reliance on finite fossil fuels. Conference, please support the motion.
Thank you, Lorna. Bill, would you like to take your opportunity to sum up for the remit back? I can give you a minute to sum up. And if Callum could be ready as well to sum up. If you could be very brief though, please.
Madam Chairman, Conference, the aspect that I didn't really cover was the sheer wind power capacity that I have at present. We have almost 90% of wind power capacity to the maximum demand of 6,000 megawatts. Now that means that we can't cope with that, but we export it to the bigger grid in England. And that aspect was thrown at us during the Yes campaign. Who is going to pay the subsidies of these wind farm operators? So, Conference, I urge you to remit back, because this wind power aspect is totally unobtainable. We can't keep on going having wind power. It's too much, absolutely too much. And move the remit back.
And Callum McCaig to sum up for the resolution. If you could also keep it brief, Callum.
I will be as brief as I can, yep. I think wind power is a good thing, first and foremost, and I think it gives us a huge potential for clean energy. But we need a diverse mix. And with a diverse mix, it will mean not just wind, but it will mean solar, it will mean tidal, which has great potential, and again, potentially being failed by the UK government. But we also need storage, both conventional hydro storage and potentially new battery storage. The energy market is changing and changing rapidly, and I want to see us be in a position to take advantage of that for ourselves, for the good of our public, for the good of our country. And we have a short window of time to do that. The mover of the remit back talked about the imbalances there. When the two nuclear power stations close in the next decade, we will be solely in the position of producing renewables. We need to close that gap in between the time between now and the mid-2020s. Westminster will not do it for us. We must do it for ourselves.
Okay, Conference, we'll move first of all to the vote on the remit back. Can I see cards in favour of the remit back? And cards against the remit back? The remit back falls. And we'll move to the vote on the resolution. Can I see cards in favour of the resolution? And cards against the resolution? The resolution is overwhelmingly carried. Thank you very much, Conference. Okay, Conference, we'll now move to our next set of topical and emergency resolutions. Topical and emergency resolution number 5 on the post-study work visa and the Brain family. Can I call Ian Blackford MP to move, to be followed by Alex Salmond MP to second.
Good afternoon, Conference. Ian Blackford, Isle of Skye branch. Let me take you back to June 2011. Catherine, Greg and Lachlan Brain arrived from Australia. They arrived from Australia having satisfied all the criteria from UK immigration. For Catherine to come to this country to study a degree in Scottish history and archaeology with the promise that was in place at the time, that post her studies, that Catherine would benefit from the post-study work visa. Conference, something that should shame each and every one of us in this country is that the UK government chose to retrospectively remove that right from Catherine and thousands of other students in our country. What then happened, of course, as we rolled on to 2016, Catherine had finished her studies, graduated this year. Greg had been supporting the family by working in the local community in Dingwall. And the UK government turned round and said that Greg couldn't carry on working, Catherine couldn't take up employment in this country, and they were faced with the prospect of having to go back to Australia. Now, when you consider the circumstances, Catherine's degree is in Scottish history and archaeology. But it wasn't just about Greg and Catherine, it was also about 7-year-old Lachlan, a young boy at the Gaelic Medium School studying in Dingwall, the future of our country. How on earth was a 7-year-old boy who's been studying in Gaelic supposed to integrate back into Australian society when he would have been 2.5 years behind pupils at Australian schools? Where was the humanity and the compassion of the UK government in dealing with this family? Now, we were in the situation that we were able to obtain an extension to allow the family to stay here in the short term, but we needed to get lucky insofar as Catherine had to satisfy the criteria of a Tier 2 work visa, and the timescales that the UK government offered us simply weren't achievable. And we were faced with the situation at the end of July that I received a letter from the Immigration Minister asking me as the local MP to assist with the government in making sure that the family left the Highlands of Scotland. You know, anyone that knows the history of the Highlands and about forced migration, and here we had a family living in our midst, our friends, part of our community, whose forebears came from the Highlands of Scotland, and the local MP is asked to assist in a process of forced deportation. Well, I can tell you my answer to the Minister was quite simple: get lost. I tell you something, not just me, but my parliamentary colleagues both in Westminster and in Holyrood, and those that supported the family were with a very, very clear voice and opinion. The Brains would not be leaving Scotland. They're part of us, and they would be staying in Scotland. Now, the family have had great support, and I do want to pay credit to all my parliamentary colleagues, but in particular, I want to thank our ex-First Minister, the Member of Parliament for Gordon Alex Salmond, who played an important role in making sure that the family had the opportunity, or Catherine had the opportunity, of working with McDonald Hotels. Thank you, Alec, for your strong part in this campaign. But, you know, Conference, whilst we were fighting this case, and we were saying to the UK government that there's a cross-party consensus in Scotland that we wanted people to come here and study and be able to benefit from the post-study work visa. Westminster said no. Westminster said no to every single political party in Scotland. But the irony was, when they were refusing to give Catherine the rights that she had, that the UK government had given her, whilst we were negotiating, they had the gall to reintroduce the post-study work visa on a pilot basis for Oxford, for Cambridge, for Imperial College, and for Bath. How insulting. It's good enough for elite universities in England, but not good enough for Scotland when Scotland's demanding it. I can't think of something that demonstrates more fully why we need control of immigration policy here in Scotland. I will sum up with this, because I'm delighted with the support that we've been able to make sure that the Brains have a future here in Scotland. But in the interim, I've had the ridiculous situation of the MacLeod family, a family with a visa to remain in Scotland, whose visa was torn up, Gloria MacLeod, returning back to Scotland to be able to pick her children up from Dingwall School, was told by the immigration officials she had no right to be here. This must end. We need control of migration policy here in Scotland so we can have a policy which is fit for our purpose.
Alex Salmond MP, to be followed by Kate Forbes MSP.
Delegates, Delegates, you're eating into my time. Alex Salmond, Member of Parliament for Gordon. First of all, to Catherine, to Greg, and particularly to Lachlan, we are happy to have you with us today. But not just today. We're happy to have you with us as part of our society. Congratulations, Ian, for your parliamentary work, and indeed to the Minister, who finally did the right thing. And thanks to Donald MacDonald of MacDonald Hotels for his wisdom of hiring Catherine. She will do a wonderful job promoting the 50th anniversary of the Aviemore Resort, an initiative which, remember, delegates, brought the glories of the Highlands within reach of the masses, not just the classes. Now, I felt a personal responsibility for this family because they were attracted to Scotland as part of the Highland Homecoming initiative when I was First Minister. That initiative was born in the idea that to grow and to be successful as a country, we should seek to reverse the long, sad story of emigration and depopulation of the Highlands of Scotland. Because no society which has experienced the pain and desolation of emigration fears the opportunity of immigration. But in this victory, there is an issue which is more than of one family. There's a tale of two countries and indeed of two governments. They say that people who choose to live and work in our country are a problem and need to be kicked out. We say they're an asset and must stay with us. They say that other Europeans among us are cards to be played or bargaining chips to be staked. We say they are our fellow citizens, the workers at our side, the nurses in our hospitals, people who have the rights which must be respected. They want lists of foreigners so as they can name and shame companies who employ them. Let me tell you, the shame is not with the companies. The shame is with a government who proposed this repellent notion. We want a country living and growing with no fear in celebrating our diversity. Delegates, we should be grateful to the Tory party. I'll just repeat that. In their Birmingham conference, they lifted the lid on the true intent and the emptiness of their programme. If we stick to London rule, then we know exactly what lies in store for it. Boiled down to its essence, a closed, intolerant, backward-looking society. Theresa May's Little England. Has there ever been a more miserable, depression, backward-looking notion ever offered to the people of this nation? And finally this. There is a better way for Scotland. No society can be offered a greater compliment by those who choose to live with us. After all, our greatest national heroes were William Wallace, the Welshman, Robert de Brew, the Norman. It's part of our 1,000-year history as a European nation. So let us proclaim our vision of a new Scotland, open, tolerant, prosperous, growing, and above all, free to choose our own way forward. Thank you very much.
Conference. Thank you, Conference. Kate Forbes, MSP, to speak in favour of the resolution, and then following that, with the permission of Conference, I'm sure that we'll all be very happy to invite a special visitor up to say a few words on behalf of the Brain family, Greg Brain.
Well, Fred, we opened Conference yesterday with the message that we reject xenophobia in all forms and that we welcome international citizens who choose to live, work and raise their families here. And this motion is about how we do it. And while we have a Westminster government that is making it increasingly complex and difficult for people to come to this country and is going to the lengths of deporting those who contribute to our society, we say that we want a visa system that is fit for purpose, that is robust, and that welcomes those who want to contribute to Scotland. In fact, it's a great irony that in Scotland there is cross-party support for the rollout of a post-study work visa in Scotland. The Tories support it, Labour supports it, and we overwhelmingly support it. But in the face of that support, we have a Westminster government who only rolled it out south of the border. And the consequences of that have been to not only hit our society, but our economy as well. Because international students, the future doctors, nurses, teachers that we need, say, that's fine, we'll go elsewhere. And they go to our competitors in Canada, Germany, Australia, when we want their talents here in Scotland. We value our doctors, our teachers, wherever they come from. And so I support this motion because Scotland has a brighter future with the doctors, the students, the teachers that choose to come and study here and then to work to the benefit of our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And Conference, please welcome Mr. Greg Brain to the platform.
My God, there are a lot of you. Some of you have noticed during the course of the day, I've been wearing this badge. It's my response to Amber Rudd's program. I wasn't born in Scotland, but I got here as soon as I could. I hope the Chair will indulge me. I've no familiarity with the processes and procedures here, but if I can just take 3 or 4 minutes of your time. I'm confident that nobody will be more sincere when I say to you that Scotland, it is good to be here. I've been asked to spend just a couple of minutes to tell you what we've been through, to try and put a personal face on what the post-study work visa means. But I can't do that. I can't convey in a couple of minutes what we've been through. I can tell you that Catherine Loughlin and I have had a win. We're still here. We're on a 12-month visa. And that's in no small part due to about half a dozen or 8 people centrally, without any one of whom we would not be here. Ian Blackford, Alex Salmon, thank you very much. To their to their staffers, for whom tireless is an understatement, and to 4 very close friends of ours, Gavin and Laurie. Gavin and Laurie and Kerry and Dave, who set up Facebook pages for us, who used their very limited press contacts to talk to a couple of people for us and started, they were the snowflake that hit the top of the mountain and started the avalanche for us. Now, we have had a victory, but the cost has been horrific. Another such victory, and we truly would be undone. We invested the proceeds from our life in Australia, about £150,000, to come here, fund Catherine's university degree, and to live here as a single income student family. We've now lost over a year's income between us, have debts of about £30,000, and that's after all the help that we've had from people, I'm sure some of whom are in this room here today. Financially, we'll probably never recover, but we are in the country where we belong for now. Now, as I said, we have a 12-month visa. That means we're going to be doing this again this time next year. It will be a somewhat more straightforward process, if straightforward can be applied to any dealings with the Home Office. There will be about £6,000 in Home Office fees and immigration and health surcharges, which will have to be paid up front, in addition to the legal costs in preparing those paperwork. And that's in addition to feeding ourselves and paying off the debts that we owe. We have no access to public funds, so that's no housing assistance, tax credit, no government assistance. We cannot buy a house, apply for a mortgage. We can't even get a phone contract. Lachlan wants a pet. We can't get that because we don't know where we'll be this time next year. We can now plan ahead to next month, which we couldn't do before, but we can't plan beyond next year yet. This is our life now. Now, had the post-study work visa been in place, as was promised to us, we wouldn't have had the lost income, nor the debt that's accrued. We would have been able to continue to pay taxes and contribute to society, continue to do the volunteering we were scared to do while the Home Office invocation was on us. And we would have had the capacity to earn for a further 2 years to save up for the expense of the Tier 2 transition. And I would ask you to remember, we're perfectly ordinary. This is what living as a family, a student family in the UK looks like. It's the huge fees, the uncertainty, not knowing whether a perfect visa application will be accepted, not knowing if the visa will be even valid when you get there. This is the reality of a long-term relationship with the Home Office. No one should have to live like this. Now, if you want to attract students, to have the world's best and brightest come to Scotland, you have to show them that they're welcome. You have to give them some measure of security and certainty. They have to know Scotland wants them to come. Scotland, you've welcomed my family with open arms. Please tell the world you'll welcome future students as well. I'd ask you to support the motion. And if I can ask, on behalf of my family, thank you.
You go and wave it at
Conference, I take it that motion is passed by acclaim. Conference, we're going to quickly move on to topical motion 6 on Aleppo. Can I ask Brendan O'Hara, MP, to move? But could I ask Michelle if she would formally second the motion? Yes, thank you very much for that, Michelle. Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Conference. I'll be very brief. Conference, in recent months, we've all been horrified by the television images that have been coming out of Aleppo, where hundreds of thousands of men, women and children are being bombed and besieged by the Assad regime and his Russian allies. But hard as it is to imagine, things in Aleppo are getting worse. Much, much worse. And indeed, just last week, the United Nations envoy to Syria said that he feared that the eastern part of the city could be totally destroyed within 2 months. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, since the US-Russian brokered ceasefire collapsed just a month ago, 500 civilians, including 100 children, have been killed and 1,300 injured. And on top of that, there's overwhelming evidence that the regime and its allies are now deliberately targeting civilians, hospitals, the emergency services and first responders. In just one day, Aleppo's largest hospital was hit 7 times by airstrikes. And just as the repairs started, they were hit again the next day. And right now, there are believed to be just 35 doctors remaining in Aleppo to serve a population of 250,000. It is an appalling situation, and right now, there is still complete chaos on the ground and in the skies over Syria, and there seems little or no prospect of an early end to this war. But as a protagonist, we say that the United Kingdom is absolutely incumbent upon them to be part of finding a solution. Because as Boris Johnson himself said on August the 19th, it is only when the fighting and the bombing stops that we can hope to deliver the political solution. But let's be absolutely clear about this. That means everybody's bombs, including the United Kingdom's. During the debate last year about extending airstrikes into Syria, we asked time and time again, how, when there were already a dozen or more protagonists in this fight, how would the United Kingdom airstrikes bring peace and stability closer to the people of Syria? In the headlong rush to join this conflict, that question was never answered. Well, the answer is clear now. It has done absolutely nothing to bring peace and stability closer. And indeed, it is further away now than when the United Kingdom dropped its first bomb in Syria last December. So today, we repeat our demand that the United Kingdom government immediately ceases its bombing campaign in Syria and explores every possible avenue of delivering aid to the beleaguered civilians of Syria. Because as I said back in February in Parliament, if we have the technology to drop bombs, then we have the technology to drop bread. Conference, support the innocent civilians of Syria and support this resolution.
Conference, there are no cards in again, so can we pass that resolution by acclaim? Thank you very much, Conference.
Conference, 10 years ago, we embarked on the Scottish Parliament election campaign. We won those elections and we've held office since. We took over the Scottish Executive and created the Scottish Government worthy of the name. And of course, we have had 2 First Ministers, Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon, over those 9 years. And you know, over those 9 years, and I have counted, including the interim leaders, there has been 9 leaders of the opposition. That's almost one for every year that we have been in office. So whilst they change their leaders, we change Scotland for the better. No wonder, with our record of delivery in the Scottish Government, that trust in the Scottish Government is so high. No wonder we are at record levels in the opinion polls for the Scottish Parliament constituency, with the most recent opinion poll at a whopping 52%. But Conference, being appointed as Cabinet Secretary for Finance is a real honour. The First Minister clearly didn't think I'd be busy enough and has doubled my role to include that of the Constitution. No pressure then, after yesterday's announcement. But I'm determined to do all that I can in this role to ensure that we deliver on our promises, building the nation that we aspire to be. Conference, the happiest countries in the world are also the fairest, which is why we are determined to create a fairer Scotland, tackling inequality in the process. A progressive taxation system has a key role to play, where taxes are proportionate to the ability to pay, provide certainty for taxpayers, allow for convenient payment, and should be efficient in their operation. We want to protect public services and also to transform them. We want to build growth in our economy, and we want that growth to be resilient and inclusive. Now, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, has been sending out mixed messages about what to expect in his autumn statement on the 23rd of November, his mini-budget. So let me help him out and tell him, in a simple sentence, what Scotland expects. When he resets his fiscal policy, as he said he would do, I call on him to do this: end austerity now. So, Conference, please give a warm welcome to many of our Cabinet members who will address you now one by one. First up, Shona Robson, your Health Secretary.
Conference, in the last decade we've seen the English NHS fragmented and opened up to privatisation. We've a UK government that's gone to war with its own junior doctors, and now talks of doctors from other countries no longer being welcome. Conference, I want to send out a loud and clear message to all of those from other countries working here in our NHS. We value you. We want you to stay. Thank you for choosing to come here and work for our NHS. By contrast to the position down south, Scotland's NHS has been kept true to Nye Bevan's founding principles: free at the point of need and kept in public hands. Scottish health funding is now at record levels, up by £3.3 billion so far, and by the end of this Parliament we'll increase it by almost a further £2 billion, the highest funding commitment of any party. This investment has seen NHS staffing increase by over 11,000 under the SNP to historically high levels, with over 2,000 more nurses and over 1,500 more consultants. And it's the hard work of our NHS staff that's seen public satisfaction steadily rise. For example, a record high 90% of patients rate their inpatient care as good or excellent. So to each of our hard-working staff, I say a huge thank you. Conference, I'm proud of our record in government. It was this party that scrapped prescription charges, ending the tax on illness in Scotland. And don't forget, the Tories still want to bring these charges back, including for cancer patients. We work in partnership with NHS staff to deliver for patients. Let me give you one example. We've worked with the Royal College of Emergency Medicine to develop the 6 Essential Actions Emergency Care. The result? Scotland's had the best performing hospital A&E in the UK for the last 18 months. But Conference, we want to go further. Yes, we have challenges, but unlike our opponents, we also have plans to meet them. We're going to increase the share of frontline NHS budget going to primary care and community care to bring treatment closer to home. Having already integrated health and care services, we're going to increase NHS funding for social care to help our ageing population live at home or in homely settings for as long as possible. And we're going to increase mental health funding and deliver a new 10-year mental health strategy to ensure whether your need is physical or mental, that an NHS is there for you. We also want to ensure that by the end of this Parliament, everyone who needs palliative care can get it. I've only got a short amount of time, so I'll tell you about just one of our plans. We're giving a new focus to specialist children's palliative care services. Nothing can be more important than making sure that the most vulnerable children and their families get the care and support they need. So I'm delighted to announce that as part of our plans, we'll be providing the fantastic children's hospice charity CHAS with approximately £30 million over the next 5 years. £30 million over the next 5 years to help children and families through the most difficult circumstances, ensuring they're able to spend quality time together. Every day, the SNP and Government stands up for our NHS and care services. And Conference, I'm delighted that you stand with us. Conference, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my colleague, the fantastic Cabinet Secretary for Justice, Michael Matheson.
Conference, nearly 10 years ago now, we set out to turn around our justice system here in Scotland, to create safer communities and to transform the way in which we deliver justice in this country. From reforming our police and fire service, to modernising our court system, investing in our prison service, putting victims at the very heart of our justice system, and tackling the scourge of crimes, such as domestic violence that blights the lives of too many women and children in our society today. And over that decade, with the support of the police and many others, recorded crime in Scotland is now at a 42-year low. Homicides in Scotland are now down by 50% since 2007, the lowest since 1976. Violent crime is down 52%. Crimes of handling offensive weapons are down by 69% over the last decade. And as a result of these achievements, we now have fewer Scots who become victims of crime. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone within our justice system who's played their part in making our communities safer here in Scotland. During the last decade, we've not just been making our streets safer, we've also been investing in our communities. Since 2008, we've been taking the money from the criminals and investing it in our communities. Through our Cashback for Communities programme, we have now invested £75 million in sports, cultural, youth and educational activities for our children and our young people, our next generation, taking the money from the criminals and putting it back into the benefit of our communities. We can be rightly proud of what we've achieved over the last decade, but there's much still to do in the years ahead. Supporting our police and fire service who do an outstanding job across our communities day in, day out. transforming the way in which we deliver community justice through the creation of Community Justice Scotland, continuing our reforms of prison policy with the biggest change in our approach to prison policy in a generation, and transforming the way in which our courts deal with vulnerable witnesses and children in particular. But conference, domestic abuse continues to blight the lives of too many families in our society. I've already set out our plans to create a new specific offence of domestic abuse, and with the support of Parliament, we'll be one of the few countries in the world that has created such a specific offence. But I want us to do more to help to support those who are victims of gender-based violence. The Scottish Women's Rights Centre recently celebrated its first anniversary of operation, drawing together many specialist groups to provide those who have suffered from gender-based violence. All the groups involved play a central role, an invaluable role in supporting victims to come to terms with the aftermath of the horrendous crimes that they are experiencing. And I'm very grateful to them for the tremendous work they undertake to strengthen the way in which we deliver services to victims of these crimes of domestic violence and sexual violence. So, conference, today I can confirm that we will be providing the centre with an extra £665,000 over the next 2 years to allow it to expand the range of services that it provides and to allow it to move from its work in the Central Belt to deliver its services right across every corner of Scotland. Conference, as a government, on justice, we have delivered significant change over the last decade, and you can be assured that over the coming years, we will continue to transform our justice system for the better here in Scotland. I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce my colleague who has the responsibility of creating a more fair and just social security system here in Scotland, Angela Constance, Cabinet Secretary for Communities, Social Security and Equalities.
Thank you very much, Michael, and it's great to hear about that fantastic announcement of an additional £665,000 being invested in services to tackle violence against women and girls. Conference, since our re-election, we have taken the challenge of achieving a fairer Scotland to a new level. We are utterly focused on bringing about lasting change that's required to tackle deep-seated deprivation, poverty and inequality. And that's why the Fairer Scotland Action Plan that I recently launched outlines activities that will be taken right across this government, with 50 concrete actions for this parliamentary term. It's an ambitious, affordable and achievable plan which sets out our long-term commitment to make Scotland a fairer and more equal place to live in. I've also recently established a £29 million fund for communities and the third sector to find new ways to tackle poverty, funding projects that will provide childcare, create new jobs and support our local communities. And unlike the UK Tory government, which scrapped statutory child poverty targets last year, sweeping child poverty under the carpet, in this party, however, children will always come first. That's why the child poverty bill that I will take forward will apply long-term, income-based targets to reduce and to ultimately eradicate child poverty. No mean feat, Conference, but we're well and truly up for it. Housing, of course, is key to achieving a fairer Scotland, and we're stepping up the pace in this with Kevin Stewart, the Housing Minister, working hard to ensure the delivery of at least 50,000 affordable homes over the lifetime of this Parliament. homes that can create jobs, supporting communities and households the length and breadth of Scotland. Of course, we also continue to spend over £1 million a year protecting people from some of the worst aspects of so-called welfare reform. Money that could lift people out of poverty is being used to mitigate callous Tory government decisions. And we might only be getting 15% of the benefits budget transferred from Westminster, but that covers 11 benefits which 1 in 4 people rely on. So we are firmly focused on transferring those benefits and services safely and securely. And Jean Freeman, the Minister for Social Security, is working hard to ensure that our new social security system will work with people and not work against them. Conference, I'm therefore very pleased to announce today that we will involve at least 2,000 people from across Scotland who have gone through all aspects of the benefit system and experience groups to help us to test our plans, to test our policies and to test our processes. Conference, the new social security powers will be the biggest programme of change in the history of devolution. And we will therefore listen, first and foremost, to those who have that lived experience to ensure that we get it right and that we get it absolutely right and ensure that we create a new social security system for Scotland with dignity and fairness at its very heart and absolutely everything that we do. So thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to now introduce the very passionate and feisty Rosanna Cunningham, MSP, Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Land Reform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. I don't know whether I'll be living up to that title in the next couple of minutes, but I do want to tell you Conference that I'm incredibly proud to stand before you today as Scotland's very first Cabinet Secretary for the Environment, Climate Change and Land Reform. And despite the order of the title, I'm going to start with the land first because it defines us and it's given us our very sense of national identity. We've shaped the landscape, but it in return has shaped us. And as a party, we've long been committed to radical land reform, a bold ambition, a massive task. We shouldn't forget the injustices of the past, but I think it's now time to look to the future. A future where our land, both rural and urban, is used to benefit the many, not the few. Our new Land Reform Act set out what we want to achieve and how we plan to achieve it, and that includes the creation of a powerful new body, the Scottish Land Commission, to drive forward the land reform agenda. It will deliver for all of Scotland. And friends, it's fantastic to reveal today that the headquarters of the Land Commission will be in Inverness, the Highland capital. I wish the Commission well. The Commissioners will be appointed in the coming months and they'll begin work next year, and I pledge them my full support. And I have another promise to make. Scotland is going to continue to lead the rest of the UK in the fight against climate change. We've already blown through our 2020 target 6 years early. Naysayers said it couldn't be done. We did it. And we're about to raise the bar by setting tough new targets. I make no apology for using Scotland as an exemplar. Those aren't my words, Conference. They're the words of Lord Debon, the chairman of the UK Committee on Climate Change. And you may remember Lord Debon as John Selwyn Gummer. Yes, that's right, a Tory, publicly declaring the SNP are getting something right. That makes a change, doesn't it? Conference, climate change is one of the defining issues of our age, and make no mistake, it is a threat to our whole environment. I want to ensure future generations can agree Scotland was bold, Scotland delivered, Scotland got it right. The transition to a low-carbon economy means difficult choices, but there are opportunities too. The remarkable success of our renewable energy sector is testament to that. So we will go further, be bolder. If only we could say the same of the UK government, which has yet to ratify the Paris Climate Accord. Friends, there are powerful individuals and organisations who seek to thwart our work to protect the environment, fight climate change and achieve radical land reform. But our Parliament has spoken, and I promise you the will of the people of Scotland will prevail. And taking up some of the challenges of the new economic opportunities of our work on climate change and the circular economy, here's Keith Brown, Cabinet Secretary for the Economy, Jobs and Fair Work.
Conference, I think it's very important that we look back over the previous time that we've had in government and actually celebrate and acknowledge some of the successes that we've had. We as a party, of course, have always been interested in two things, of course, achieving national sovereignty, but also looking after the interests of the people of Scotland. And I think that means building up Scotland. And it's worth looking at just one or two highlights. First of all, at the M80, people don't talk about it anymore, but it was a substantial motorway project completed on time and under budget. Many of you coming today to this conference will have used the M74, talked about for decades, but completed on time and on budget by an SNP government. There's many other projects. The Airdrie to Bathgate Railway project, I shouldn't say or pretend that these were done under my directorship. Many other ministers have been involved in this, but the Airdrie to Bathgate Railway completed on time and on budget. We've had a very interesting small project, which I'll mention, the Mastodloch bypass, which will be well known to people here from Murray. Now, a tiny little bypass, but they've been trying to build that for nearly 60 years, and it was an SNP government that completed that project. Now, much of these projects have been about improving the infrastructure and the productive potential in Scotland, but they're also about providing work and jobs, and they are by their nature labour intensive. But we've also been very busy over the previous 9 years in saving jobs. Think about Ferguson's, the last commercial shipbuilders in Scotland, saved by an SNP government. Think also about Prestwick Airport, or think about DL, the saviour through the First Minister and Fergus Ewing of the last steelmaking plant in Scotland, saved by an SNP government. And if you look at the latest figures for unemployment, we have a position just now, according to the figures, of around 4.7 unemployment in Scotland. That's lower than the UK, one of the lowest figures we've had in nearly 25 years. And that is no coincidence. That has got a great deal to do with the work that we've done. But at the same time as trying to build jobs, we've also been very keen to make sure we have a fairer distribution of those jobs and fairer working practices for people. So we've seen through Rosanna Cunningham and Nicola Sturgeon the establishment of the Fair Work Convention. We've seen the largest contract that's issued by any government in Scotland, and that's a contract for our railway services, guaranteeing to everybody involved in that company a living wage, but also guaranteeing to every subcontractor used by that company that everybody will have a living wage. This is making Scotland a fairer place and using the power of government to do that. Obviously, that's not a job finished. There's a great deal more to do. So what you've seen in the last few weeks is the First Minister announced the Scottish Growth Scheme. This is the means by which many companies who find it hard to access finance will be able to tap into up to £500 million of new money made available to companies so they can scale up or get off the ground projects that we'd find it hard to finance. £500 million of direct support that will be available to companies in Scotland. And in addition to that, the response to Brexit, which has still not happened from the UK government. We've not seen what their response to be. We've not seen what their ideas are or what their plan is. But what we saw from the Scottish government was the First Minister announcing £100 million of capital stimulus Now, that's for environmental projects, that's for improving, for example, energy efficiency. That's for capital projects, because even people like the OBR will tell you the most effective way of sustaining the economy is to invest in capital projects. So real action being taken by the government as we move forward. And we will continue to work for Scotland. Some of those other projects still underway. The Aberdeen Western Peripheral Route, the biggest roads project in the whole of the UK right now. Again, something that's been talked about, demanded for the last 50 years from people in that area. We've seen the Forth Crossing. The biggest project that we have underway just now, the Forth Crossing, which will be completed by its contracted completion date and will be completed around £250 million cheaper than the tender price came in. I mention these things, Conference, because it's always been our party's philosophy to build Scotland up. We see our country being torn down too often by our opponents. It's our job to build up Scotland, to instil that confidence. And on that issue of building up Scotland, we owe a great deal for all the projects which I've mentioned to somebody who's managed to find the finances to do that, and I'm sure our new Finance Secretary will do the same. But our Finance Secretary over these years has had to find the money to make these projects a reality. It's my pleasure, therefore, to introduce our former Finance Secretary, our Education Secretary, our Deputy First Minister, our John, ladies and gentlemen, John Swinney.
Conference, in May of this year, a remarkable thing happened. 9 years after we were first elected to government, we went to the polls, we went to the country to seek a historic third consecutive term in office. Led by Nicola Sturgeon, a leader with a close and direct relationship with our people, we asked the electorate for a new mandate. We set out our record, we promoted our team, we explained our vision of a fair and prosperous nation, and the voters delivered a thumping great victory for the SNP and for Scotland. Friends, the doors that you knocked, the leaflets you delivered, the voters you canvassed, and the neighbours you convinced, that's what made our victory possible. It was a victory founded on hard work. It was built on doorsteps the length and breadth of Scotland. It's the greatest strength of this party. Now, don't get me wrong. Some would say that our First Minister is our greatest strength, and far be it from me to disagree with that important statement. I wouldn't dream of it. Others will tell you our greatest strength is our vision for the nation, and they're not wrong either. But for me, our greatest strength is born of our roots. We are not a branch office of a UK party. We are... We are neither apologists for a UK government. We draw our strength from every community, every town, every village, every creed and colour in this great nation. Friends, our greatest strength is that we are rooted in all of the communities of Scotland. And last weekend we saw the stark contrast between this country, this party, and those who have a different vision for this nation. Last weekend, while the Tories took to their conference platform to spout forth xenophobic bile, here in Scotland an amazing thing happened. As the week went on, and as the bile poured forth, here people started to tweet about what they loved. They tweeted about their origins. They tweeted about their families. They tweeted about their friends here and in other countries. They stood up to the xenophobes in the best way possible by celebrating the diversity that makes Scotland. They met hate with love, and they made every one of us very proud that we all live here in Scotland. The late dearly missed Bashir Ahmed said it best. He summed up our ethos with this simple statement: it doesn't matter where you come from. What's important is where we're going together as a nation. In the face of the right-wing demagoguery of the Tory Brexit government, it has never been more important that we celebrate that spirit and hold fast to that truth. It's who we are, whether born here or abroad, whatever your creed, whatever your colour, a Scot by birth or a Scot by choice. All of us, every single one of us, are part of our nation. All of us who choose to live here, we are Scotland. Our vision is of an inclusive nation. At the election, we took a positive and vibrant vision of what Scotland can become. In Nicola Sturgeon, we have a First Minister pledged to serve all of Scotland, and we have a government committed to building a fair, equal and prosperous nation with opportunity for all of us to grow and to thrive. Our manifesto set out a plan for reform and transformation. It is a prospectus to fulfil Scotland's massive potential. For Scotland's children, it means a better start in life. And for parents, it means more jobs, better paid jobs, and greater security. For our health and social care services, it means fresh ideas, giving the vulnerable in our society an improved quality of life. For our economy, it means helping all businesses to innovate and to grow, and making sure everyone gets a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. For our country as a whole, it means using new powers over tax and social security to expand our economy and to lift more people out of poverty. But above all else, it means trusting the people of Scotland to make the big decisions about the future of our country. That was our prospectus. Now it is our programme for government. This is the route to create a fair and prosperous Scotland for all in our country. Since 2007, we have transformed education, bolstered our health service, reformed policing, taken employment to new levels, to record levels, and built thousands of affordable homes. Our investment has delivered modern schools, colleges and universities, as well as some of the biggest transport improvements the country has ever seen. Our aim has always been to build a country where strong public services are underpinned by a successful economy. Yes, we are proud of our record, but we know there is still much more to do. That is our task now, to build a better future for Scotland and for everybody who chooses to live and to work here with us in Scotland. Friends, you've just heard from our Cabinet team. The Cabinet Secretary is leading change in all of their portfolios. Angela Constance creating a social security system based on dignity and respect. Shona Robertson delivering record levels of healthcare to more patients here in Scotland. Michael Matheson delivering a 42-year low in crime. Rosanna Cunningham delivering on our world-leading climate change targets 6 years ahead of schedule. Keith Brown growing the economy despite the headwinds of the Tory Brexit. Fiona Hislop has just arrived from Brussels, where she's been fighting for Scotland's place in Europe, and Fiona will address the conference later this afternoon. And Fergus Ewing is away from conference, fighting for Scotland's rural economy, promoting our fantastic produce to the retailers that can make Scottish food and drink a success. Not for them, party before country. They are SNP ministers. And for us, country comes first. Always country comes first. And friends, before you think I've forgotten someone, I want to say a word about Derek Mackay, our new Finance Secretary. I have, of course, done that job. It's not easy. It gets tougher as the times get tougher. But I know Derek will do a fantastic job as the Finance Secretary in the Scottish Government. But I do have a word of warning for him. I too was once a young-looking Finance Minister with a full head of hair. So be warned, Derek, this is your future. On stage and off stage, this is the team that leads our nation. And at the head of that team is our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. Acknowledged by friend and foe alike, she has given this party and this country the leadership it needs in some very uncertain times. No one could have been more struck by this than on the morning of the 24th of June. In the wake of the EU referendum result, it was Nicola Sturgeon who stepped up. It was Nicola Sturgeon who laid out a path for Scotland to follow. While Boris and Gove panicked, Cameron resigned, and Corbyn went missing, it was Nicola Sturgeon who rejected the xenophobia of Farage, reassured our EU friends here in Scotland, and defended our relationship with Europe. In that moment, there was a crisis of leadership in London. Here in Scotland, leadership had its finest hour. And that crisis rolls on in Westminster. Barely a day goes by that the three Brexiteers of Boris, Davis and Fox do not embarrass the whole of the United Kingdom. Theresa May is in office, but it is already obvious that she is not in power. A Remain voter, apparently, she's been driven by the Tory hard right to a hard Brexit, just as David Cameron was driven to a referendum by those self-same hard-right Brexiteers in the first place. The consequences can barely be contemplated. One consequence I will deal with directly today. We as a government have already confirmed tuition fee funding to support EU students studying here or preparing to start here in this year. Now we will extend that guarantee to those EU students wishing to come to start in Scotland in the next year, in 2017-18. And unlike Labour and the Tories, that's tuition-free education. Tuition-free education that we are guaranteeing, not the massive fees they impose on students wherever they come from. But let me go further. We will guarantee their funding. What I demand is that the Tory Brexit government guarantees their right to stay here during their studies and to work here after their studies. These people are not cards to be played. They are fellow human beings. To use them as negotiating chips is obscene, and this party and this SNP government will have none of it. Conference, the Tory Brexit government's threat to people's right to stay here is just another part of the hard right agenda now running rampant at Westminster. And in the face of this ugly Tory Brexit agenda, where stands Labour? Nowhere is the answer. When Jeremy Hunt put foreign-born doctors on notice of deportation, when Amber Rudd announced her sinister list of foreign workers, Labour didn't stand up in defiance. Instead, their press office said the Tories had not gone far enough. Shame, shame, shame on the pathetic Labour Party. Now, there will be some in Labour as horrified as we are at their collective moral failure. Kezia Dugdale tweeted, "Not in my name." But let's be clear. For as long as Kezia Dugdale insists on powers over immigration, Europe and all the rest remaining in London, Kezia shares the blame. I sat in the Smith Commission. I watched as Labour vetoed proposal after proposal from Linda Fabiani and from me to devolve power after power to Scotland. So, Kezia Dugdale, you may say it's not in your name, but I say it is at your hand. And the people of Scotland will never forget that Labour were prepared to allow the Tories to rule Scotland to stop our country deciding on our own future. Friends, make no mistake, we are the National Party, and we will always put the national interests first. We believe in our nation's ability to govern herself, and we believe in our community's abilities to take power into their own hands. We want to reinvigorate local government by reconnecting it with communities. The principle of local control, not on behalf of a community, but by a community, is key. This is at the heart of our programme. We have already launched the review of how school education is governed, setting ourselves the task of making parents and teachers the key decision makers in the life of our schools. Over the coming Parliament, we will go further. We will review the roles and responsibilities of local authorities, and we will look again at the relationships between local authorities and health boards. We aim to achieve nothing less than to transform our democratic landscape, protect and renew public services, and refresh the relationship between citizens, communities and councils. We do this not because it is radical, and it is, but because we believe it is right. We don't do it because it's easy, it's not, but because it is in the national interest. We believe that national interest lies in placing power in the hands of the people of this country. It is why I believe in independence. Just as we believe the best people to decide the future of our country are those who live here, so we believe the best people to decide the future of our communities are the people who live in those communities. We will trust the people to make the decisions about their future. That is our creed, and that is the truly radical path of this Scottish National Party government. After the election, I was given the enormous privilege of becoming the Education Secretary at the request of the First Minister. The task the First Minister has given to me is simple: to raise the bar for all and to close the attainment gap for our poorest pupils. And our ambition is equally straightforward. We will make significant progress in closing the gap within the next Parliament and substantially eliminate it within a decade. It may be a simple objective, it may be a straightforward aim, but it will not be easy. We do not underestimate the scale of our ambition. We do not underestimate the destructive force of poverty. We know the damage it does to the life chances of our youngest, poorest children. I believe the single best route out of poverty is education. I believe the single most powerful weapon we have to fight poverty is education. We will bring the whole education system together behind our purpose: the expansion of childcare to 30 hours per week, the focus on school education unreservedly on learning and teaching, the widening of access to university, the strengthening of apprenticeships, the linking of college to the world of work. All will come together in the same national mission: to free every single child from the burden of poverty. I will give it, I promise you, my relentless focus. I will not rest until we have delivered the best possible future for every single young person in our country. Friends, 9 years ago, we set out on a journey in government. We have come a long way. The people of our country have asked us to go further, to make Scotland stronger. That is our task. That is our pledge. Our promise to Scotland is this: this SNP government will build a fair, equal and a prosperous Scotland. Thank you very much.
Okay, conference, we're going to go on with the rest of our agenda for today. We're moving on to Resolution 16, Scotland's Place in Europe, to be moved by Tony Giuliano and seconded by Joanna Cherry MP. Tony, oh, there he is.
Conference, I moved to this country, to this city, when I was 7 years old. I spoke no English, and on my first day at school, my classmates had each learned something in Italian to make me feel welcome. And I'll never forget, one of them wrote, "Welcome to Glasgow. P.S. If you're a real Italian, whereabouts is your chippy?" My family, like thousands of other migrants, came here to work. They run businesses. They teach our children. They are the lifeblood of our NHS. They make an incredible contribution to our society, just like the millions of Scots who emigrated, enriching nations across the globe. And yet, they have been demonised as benefit cheats, denied a vote in the referendum, and now used as bargaining chips. Conference, these are people's lives. It's time for the Tories to stop messing with them and guarantee their right to live here now. As John Swinney said earlier, on the morning of the 24th of June, for millions of people across the UK, the future was suddenly thrown in doubt. And in times of profound uncertainty, it's the job of politicians to steady the ship and chart a new course. The Prime Minister, he abdicated responsibility. The Chancellor, nowhere. The Home Secretary, silent. Only one leader gave that direction and reassurance, the First Minister of our country, Nicola Sturgeon. Delegates, Tory Party conference was an eye-opener. It told us everything we need to know about the kind of country they want. They want employers to list foreign workers, universities to crack down on foreign students, the NHS to replace foreign doctors, walls built across the Channel. Conference, what a reckless display of divisive nationalism. It has no place in Scotland. We will never subscribe to it. Friends, the Leave campaign was a con, led by politicians responsible for the deep inequalities that scar our society. Politicians who imposed austerity on the most vulnerable and then shifted the blame onto the shoulders of migrants. Unless Scotland takes its destiny in its own hands, these are the people who will continue to decide our future. And make no mistake, the United Kingdom that Scotland voted for in 2014 no longer exists. 2 years ago, Labour and the Tories said, vote no to protect your place in Europe. Today, we stand on the brink of the EU exit door. Delegates, those parties can never be trusted with Scotland's future again. I am proud that Scotland voted emphatically to remain in the EU. Brexit never was and never will be in our national interest. Strathclyde University say a hard Brexit will lead to 80,000 fewer Scottish jobs by 2026. And if the UK does stay in the single market, the price tag will be $5 billion a year just to access it. Friends, that is the absurdity of Brexit, paying more for what we already had. But whether you count yourself as a Euro enthusiast or a Eurosceptic, this is now much bigger than that. This is about Scotland's right to be heard. Theresa May came to Scotland pledging to listen, but she's since made clear that the only voice that matters is her own. So we face a choice. Do we continue to be dismissed and ignored as a nation, or do we take our place in the world as a constructive member of the international community, as an independent country? Conference, I will conclude because my lights are flashing in front of me. We voted to stay in the world's largest market. We voted to protect our workplace rights. We voted to safeguard our right to live and work across the continent. So the message to the Prime Minister is this: the days of Scotland being sidelined are over. Remain means remain. Our voice will be heard.
Joanna Cherry MP to second, to be followed by Alec Orr to move the remit back.
Good afternoon, fellow delegates. Like Tony, I'm the daughter of an immigrant. My mum came over from Ireland more than 50 years ago to do her midwifery training and stayed in Scotland. And she always says that she brought her daughters up not to be Irish nationalists, and she's ended up with two wee rampant Scottish nationalists instead. But of course, Scottish nationalism, like modern Irish nationalism, is very internationalist and outward-looking in its expression. And it's important to remember this motion this afternoon is not about whether or not we should stay in the European Union. That's already been decided. Overwhelmingly, 62% of Scots voted to remain. This motion is about ensuring the democratic will of that vote is respected. And as the First Minister said yesterday, that doesn't mean to say we don't listen to those who voted to leave the European Union, but primarily we have to respect the democratic mandate of those who voted to stay. During the referendum, the independence referendum, as you'll all remember, Ruth Davidson and others repeatedly told us that the only way to guarantee Scotland's continued membership of the European Union was to vote to stay in the UK. Well, that promise, like so many they made, has now been broken and revealed for the lie it always was. Because when that promise was made, Ruth Davidson knew very well that it was going to be in her party's manifesto to have a referendum on Europe, and there was a real risk would be taken out. The only party that can protect Scotland's position in Europe is the SNP, and we have to do that by being strong and standing up against the xenophobia and the arrogance of this horribly right-wing government. And we need to make it very clear to Ruth Davidson and our nasty right-wing colleagues down south that no amount of hectoring and bullying will prevent us from holding a second independence referendum if necessary. The Tory party in Scotland fought the last Holyrood campaign on a single issue, that there should never again be an independence referendum, and they lost dismally and came a distant second. By contrast, the SNP Scottish Government won a historic third term with the highest mandate of any government in Western Europe, and on a manifesto which clearly said that if there was a material change of circumstances, such as Scotland being forced to leave the European Union against her will, then we would hold a second independence referendum. So, conference, let's be very clear. We have a democratic mandate to do that if necessary, and it is our duty to do it if necessary. And let me say very clearly to Ruth Davidson, you don't get to dictate what happens in Scotland. That is up to the Scottish people.
Okay. Yes, you can come to the stage to make your point of order.
Thank you, Convener. Mike Loonan, Thurso branch. I put a card in to speak for the remit back at 10 minutes to 2 today. If Mr. Orr's card was put in before that, I will cheerfully withdraw. If it was put in after, why was mine not taken if it was put in first?
It's at the Chair's discretion who's called to move and second remits back.
So there's nothing clever about getting a card in early?
Not particularly, no.
Okay. Can I then have my card to speak against?
That's your point of order. We need to move on with the rest of the debate. We've got a lot of cards in for this debate conference. I think we are not going to be able to get to everyone, but we will try and get through as many cards as possible, and we will obviously strive to have a balanced debate and take as many speakers from different sides of the debate as we can. I would ask all speakers to keep to time as much as possible, please, and I will cut off your microphone if I have to. Obviously, I'd rather not do that. So could I have Ali Kaur to move the remit back, please, to be followed by Graham McCormick to second.
Great, thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, Conference. In 1992, William McIlvanney told the 30,000 of us gathered at the European Summit in Edinburgh, marching for the establishment of a Scottish Parliament, that we gather here like refugees in the capital of our own country. These words cannot have been more apt following the Conservative Party conference, when the nasty party just got considerably nastier, as it surged remorselessly to the toxic right under the guise of Brexit. Brexit is the greatest political upheaval in British politics in half a century, and is indeed deepening the divide in the Union. The political weather has changed, but I urge caution. I urge caution when we look at how we achieve the goal of independence for our nation. As a Europhile like Tony, no one more than me would delight and relish an independent Scotland within the EU. What I'm about to say, however, may not be terribly popular, but I've never been one to hold back from saying what I actually believe. The next independence referendum we go for must be one that we are confident that we can win, when the time is right, or the issue is off the agenda for decades. I therefore urge some caution, and while I applaud the sentiment of the resolution, my concern is that we're tying the independence referendum solely to the trigger of Brexit. Let's remember a few things. Around a third of SNP voters voted for Brexit. That means we need to be mindful of how we link these two issues together and avoid a headlong, enthusiastic rush into holding such a vote at a time which may not be of our own choosing. We also clearly have to be wary of what this resolution actually states. It says Conference believes that every avenue must be explored to keep Scotland in the EU. Now, the Scottish Government position has actually subtly changed, and it's been reinforced by the First Minister yesterday. That is not that we remain part of the European Union, but that we retain membership of the single market. These are two very, very different objectives. So if you vote for this resolution, we're tying our First Minister and Government's hands. What we're saying is that if we do retain our goal of staying within the single market and not the European Union, we would still be bound to head down the road of an independence referendum. In our manifesto, we pledged the right to hold a referendum if there was a significant and material change in circumstances since the referendum in 2014. Dare I say it, we could have a mixture of triggers, not necessarily solely Brexit. We have policies being pursued by the most right-wing Conservative government in history, also a suitable trigger for an independence vote. I would urge caution, therefore, on tying the timing of the calling of an independence referendum to EU membership. The eventual deal may be one actually supported by the Scottish people. We should also have a referendum conference at a time we can confidently win it. There's much good in this referendum, but let's not bind our First Minister and Government's hands. Remit it back and bring it back at a future date when we're clear on the nature of any Brexit deal that has been negotiated for Scotland and the implications of this on the holding of another referendum. Thank you.
Graham McCormick to second the remit back, to be followed by Fiona Hislop, MSP.
Conference, the last time I was in this auditorium, it was a pantomime, and John Barrowman fell off a horse. The horse was a supporter of independence. I'm an enthusiastic supporter of the EU. However, this resolution is fundamentally flawed. It confuses the European Union and Europe. More fundamentally, this resolution is a gift to the Unionists, as it gives the perception that our independence is conditional on membership of the EU. My concern is fortified when I heard one of our leading parliamentarians suggest that if we didn't stay in the EU, then our right to call another independence referendum would be undermined and unjustifiable. I do not believe that this is the view of the party. In or out of the EU, Scotland must be independent. One of the lessons we should have learned from the independence referendum was to keep control of our options. On the two crucial issues of currency and continued EU membership, we lost control. because our arguments were predicated on the perceived cooperation of the UK Government and all EU member states. The UK establishment was dismissive, while the EU members were at best non-committal, and despite their war on words, will continue to be until we are independent. So while Brexit is an opportunity and campaign accordingly, surely we have to prepare for Plan B, Sexit. I should emphasise this has nothing to do with Donald Trump or Bill Clinton, but it is the economy stupid. And I find it incredible that there is not one resolution or debate to debate our approach to taxation and the nation's economy on this conference agenda. Thousands of us ordinary members of the SNP are doing our best to discuss, argue, influence and contribute to what we want our Scotland to be. So why do we marginalise the most important thing that matters to everyone, the economy, to official and unofficial fringe meetings? Cutting through the diverse ideas from across the independence family, there is a way forward which appeals to the rural and the urban, the haves and the have-nots, the Europhile and the internationalist, the entrepreneur, and those who have hope as their only comfort. It behoves our party and government to embrace this now and do two things. Firstly, we must live as if we were already independent by acting and taking decisions to emphasise what sets us apart as a nation in a wholly positive way. And we must define our currency, banking, industrial and public revenue systems without depending on the shifting sands of cooperation from any third-party states. Much of this can be implemented now under devolution. On foreign affairs, employment rights, living wage, defence, pensions, mortgages, social security, industrial development, there are both legislative and very powerful influential measures we in Scotland can take. But the fundamental truth is this: it is not EU membership which will deliver independence. We already have the legislative power in our hands. It is land reform, and the taxation of that land can raise much more public revenue to accelerate our infrastructure and economic development and attack the obscenity of poverty through an annual ground rent on every square metre of our land, foreshore and territorial waters. You can raise so much through this method that you can replace all existing UK Scottish taxes and slash the tax burden of virtually everyone else. Just the last second, please. We must never again offer an independence vision which depends on the goodwill of other countries to deliver. Remit the resolution back. Thank you.
Okay, call Fiona Hislop MSP to speak in favour of the resolution, to be followed by Barry Hannaford, who will speak against the resolution.
Fiona Hislop, Cabinet Secretary for External Affairs in the Scottish Government. Conference, in supporting this motion, I want to make it quite clear that this motion is entirely consistent with the position set out by the First Minister yesterday. MPs would be voting against the Brexit bill, and Alex and Graham, I have sympathies with some of the arguments that you're making and taking, but our options will be still left open in supporting this motion. Conference, I want to share with you my activities as the Scottish Government Cabinet Secretary leading on international relations in Europe. First of all, I want to put on record my thanks to the team that we have in working with me on Scotland's place in Europe. We have our Deputy Minister for Europe, Alistair Allen. We have the Minister for UK Negotiations, Mike Russell. We have our two MEPs, Alan Smith and Ian Hudgton, and our Westminster team, Alex Salmond on Foreign Affairs, Stephen Gethins on Europe, Tasmina Ahmed-Sheikh on International Trade, and Joe McAlpine, MSP, chairing that parliamentary committee. That is a formidable team working on our behalf on Europe. And my role has been to make sure we had a plan ready in the first place to provide leadership and reassurance if the UK voted to leave. Delegates, we were the only one with a plan. And the leadership shown by Nicola Sturgeon from day one has been outstanding, and I can tell you has made a big impact across Europe. And do not underestimate the solidarity given to EU nationals, and what that means across Europe. I'm also responsible for taking the position of Scotland to the heart of Europe, and to make sure it's understood by the EU 27 governments. So yesterday, as the First Minister was setting out our position in opposing the Brexit bill for more powers to Scotland and also for the publication of the independence referendum bill, I was on a stage in Brussels yesterday announcing the very same thing, simultaneously taking our message to the heart of Europe. And in recent weeks, I have been in Paris, I've been in Italy, I was in Brussels yesterday, I will be again next week, and I'll also be in Malta, we'll be holding the European presidency. So our message is very clear, that in terms of Theresa May, if you want to make Brexit Britain lead to the breakup of Britain by heading for a hard Brexit, that is your choice and that is your responsibility. Scotland did not vote to leave the EU. The UK vote was not for a hard Brexit. This country can be everything it can be, but we will do so as an international nation. We are a national party because we are international. Let's keep our options open. Let's argue for a progressive international position for Scotland and let this country be everything it can be.
Barry Hannaford, who will speak against the resolution, to be followed by Michael Russell, MSP, to speak in favour.
Thank you. Friends, fellow nationalists, I find it a bit strange to be up here disagreeing with the motion of my good friends Tony and Joanne, but in particular what concerns me is the last sentence here, which says Scotland should prepare for a second independence referendum, not that bit, and seek to remain in Europe as an independent country. Now, what that strikes me, because I come from a marketing background, is to conflate issues. What you're doing in a marketing sense is you're creating a double door through which people are asked to walk. Let's not forget that to be pro-European is not the same as being pro-EU. And before the referendum, a lot of us had substantive doubts about some of the actions of the EU. If we're going to go forward to IndyRef 2, it is essential, and I've believed in this for 50 years of my life, that we go forward with a single, simple proposition. The issue of our independence from Westminster is, to me, undeniable. It's straightforward. Who wants to be part of an institution where the only function of the majority of parties there is to wage war? The Tories want to wage war on foreigners, on the weak, on the vulnerable. Labour want to wage war on each other. UKIP want to wage war on the whole of the world. And the Liberals, of course, they want to wage war in reality. Let's not fall for it. I believe that an independent Scotland would not need EU regulation to protect our rights, to protect our interests. I don't disagree with the decision to be in the EU, but it is an and-then decision. It is not an and at the same time decision. The same as many other changes we may wish to make in this country. We've got a lot of issues to answer with it. Borders, currency, and one that no one really seems to be coming to grips with, and I don't like to bring a downer to a meeting, but if the EU applies punitive trading rules against the rest of the UK, and Scotland is in the EU, they're obliged to apply the same rules. Now, given that we trade more with the rest of the UK than with Europe, that presents an issue for which we have to have comprehensive answers. Which is why I say, let's go for independence. Let's believe in Scotland, and let's make everyone understand that Britain is not so great. Friends, please reject this motion. Thank you.
Michael Russell, MSP, to speak in favour of the resolution, to be followed by Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh, MP.
Convener, thank you. Before Brexit, and it's sometimes difficult to believe there was anything before Brexit, I had booked a few days in Iceland this week. And I've just come back, and I can report to you that the First Minister is as big a star in Iceland as she is here. I can also report to you that Iceland is having a vigorous debate about Europe. They're members of the European Economic Area. They think that there may be advantages or disadvantages in that. They're having the type of debate that we had in the run-up to June the 23rd. but there are two big differences. The first is we had the debate, and we decided what we wanted to do by a whopping majority. And the second thing is when they decide, and the second difference is this, when they decide in Iceland what they want to do, as a nation, they will do it. Our problem is, whatever we decide, there are attempts to stop us doing it. So we have to go into this debate, and we have to go into these negotiations as a nation. We have to speak as a nation. We have to discuss as a nation. We have to act as a nation. And that is what we will do at every stage of the negotiations. And to do that, we'll go in as a nation with distinctive Scottish characteristics. This is a nation of the mind. This is a nation of the Enlightenment. So we'll go in with a rational approach against irrationality, a constructive approach against prejudice. And we'll go in trying to be a beacon to others who believe that the right thing to do in these circumstances is to show a constructive, positive view of the world, a view that says, come and join us, not go away, we don't want you. Now, the First Minister stressed in what she said yesterday that it was absolutely vital that we looked after our national interest. And you will not be told what that national interest is by Ruth Davidson or Kezia Dugdale or David Davis or Boris Johnson. We've been in this party long enough to know what the national interest of Scotland is. It used to be, if you remember, on our membership cards, the furtherance of all Scottish interests. And we've been having that debate in the Scottish Parliament week after week. We've been talking about the issues that we need to address. And there are many and varied. But we'll go into negotiations to address them, to speak about them, not to be spoken for. We will not accept the arrogant assumption that we can sit in the corner while somebody else speaks on behalf of the vital interests of Scotland. That will never happen. Never, ever. Convener, as I conclude, I want to remind conference of one thing. In Royal Terrace in Edinburgh, a route I take to St Andrew's House in the morning, there is a plaque and a French flag. The French flag marks the place of Free French House. The plaque marks a tribute that de Gaulle made to Scotland during the Second World War. The oldest alliance in the world, he called it. He unveiled that plaque in 1942, on the 23rd of June, 1942, 74 years before the referendum. We are the people of the oldest alliance in the world. That is an alliance with France and with Europe. We will never give it up. Never.
Tasmina, okay. Jerry, if you'd like to come up and make your point of order.
Like my good friend Mike Lunan from Thurso, I put in a card before the start of this debate. That card said to speak against or move the remit back or the direct negative. You have not called any direct negative.
Jerry, your card wasn't a valid card because you actually marked to do three different things on your card. We need you to mark to do one, to either move the remit back or to speak against the motion or to move the direct negative. I'm afraid your card actually cancelled itself.
But you have not called any direct negative, Madam Chairman.
I'm sorry, Jerry, there was no card put in which specifically said to move the direct negative. Your own card was not a valid speaker's card and it cancelled itself out. I'm sorry, Jerry, you've made your point of order. Okay, the next speaker is Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh MP to speak in favour of the motion, to be followed by Mike Lunan to speak in favour of the remit back. Jerry, I'm sorry, you've made your point of order. The fault was yours on this occasion, I'm afraid.
The blockage is complete.
Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh to speak in favour of the resolution. And will Mike Lunan be ready to speak in favour of the remit back?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
I'm sorry. Okay, if you'd like to make your point of order quickly, please. You'll need to make your point of order at the microphone, sir.
Hello. I don't intend to take up much time at the moment, but I put in a direct negative to this resolution.
Sorry,
the party didn't
sorry,
support...
John. Sorry, John, I'm going to have to disagree with you. Your card actually was put in to support the remit back. It doesn't mention the direct negative at all. So you did not put in, we received no card clearly moving a direct negative, which is why a direct negative has not been taken. If a card was in to move a direct negative, we would have taken a direct negative, but none was submitted.
I had
so
a card
you've made your
put
point
it
of
in
order,
this
John.
morning specifying a direct...
Next speaker, please. The point of order has been taken. Can we move to the next speaker? And colleagues, could we please treat speakers with respect? We are trying to hold as balanced a debate as possible. After the next speaker, I will take another speaker in favour of the remit back. And if we have time, there will be other speakers who will speak on different sides of the debate. But we really need to move on with this debate conference. No one has put in to move a direct negative. I want to make that absolutely clear. The National Secretary and the Chair have looked at every single card, and there was not one put in to move a direct negative. That is why we are not taking a direct negative. Conference, could we please have some respect for our next speaker and listen to Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh MP? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Conference, who would you trust to stand up for Scotland's interests? The Scottish Government led by Nicola Sturgeon, or a Tory government whose antics are simply an international embarrassment? They are a total and utter shambles. Let's look at their record, Conference. No plan, no timescale, no agreement. And despite personally appointing the three Brexiteers, Liam Fox, David Davis and Boris Johnson, time after time, Theresa May clarifies, explains away or flatly contradicts them. We can't trust this Tory government to get the best deal from this process, Conference. They don't even trust each other. But there is one thing this Tory government agree on: demonising and demeaning others because of where they come from. The intolerant rhetoric that flowed freely from their party conference in Birmingham was disgusting. At a time when the ugly face of prejudice, xenophobia, misogyny, sexism, homophobia and racism is raising its head with increased vigour, their behaviour is nothing short of irresponsible, and they do not speak for us. So from the children of immigrants who are bullied at school, to their parents who fear for their livelihoods, we will not walk by you, we stand by you, we stand with you, and together we will stand tall. At the ballot box on the 23rd of June, Scotland demonstrated its internationalist vision. That is our mandate. We'll explore every avenue and exhaust every opportunity to protect our place in the EU. But let's be clear, if the current constitutional arrangements prevent that, voters must have the opportunity to choose their own path. Independence for Scotland. Please support this motion.
Mike Loonan to speak in favour of the remit back, to be followed by Alistair Allen, MSP.
Mike Loonan, Thurso Branch. Thank you, Madam Convener, for allowing me to come and propose and second the remit back. I'm very grateful to you. You're not voting on the speeches we've heard, all of which have been excellent and every word of which I've agreed with. They've been emotional, they've been heartfelt, they've been designed to tell Scotland what the SNP, its members, its government feels about Brexit. But you're not voting on the speeches, you're voting on this strange set of words. I will offer a £20 prize for the first person who can spot the misprint, by the way, during the time I'm up here. Can't argue with paragraph 1, can't argue with paragraph 2, can't argue with paragraph 5. What is missing is outrage. Conference expresses its disappointment. God help us. Conference in paragraph 3 believes it would be democratically unacceptable. It wouldn't. It would be a bloody outrage if Scotland is dragged out of Europe against its will. We voted to stay in. That's why I'm moving, seconding, whatever, supporting the remit back. The piece of paper in front of you isn't sufficiently outrageous. It's all been overtaken by events. I'm amazed that SOAC allowed a motion on Brexit when it was fairly obvious it was a moving target, and the First Minister would be probably saying something pretty intelligent about it long after this went to print, long before the conference formally started. Please remit it back. It's not outrageous enough. We all know what we feel, but this motion doesn't say it. Chuck it out. Sorry, there wasn't a misprint, but it was merely to make you read the motion.
Alistair Allen, MSP, to speak in favour of the resolution, to be followed by Robert Martin, who will speak in favour of the remit back.
Conference, many of us stayed awake all night on the night of the referendum, and I had the privilege of staying awake all night at the Grangemouth Sports Centre, where the Scottish results were added up. It was a strange place and a night of mixed emotions, but we didn't have long to contemplate those mixed emotions, because at 7 a.m, the Grangemouth ladies hockey team came into the sports hall and demanded the use of it. But although there wasn't much time to think about the situation, although there wasn't much time for the rest of us to take in what had happened, we are very fortunate that we have a First Minister who reacted quickly and who said things that needed to be said. Because after the ugly tone of the referendum, our First Minister, and we should be proud of this, said to people from other EU countries resident in Scotland, "We need you. This is your home. We want you to stay." Now, of course, since then, the UK government has largely been unable to explain what Brexit means, other than for them to say that just about everything, including community cohesion, the single market, can be sacrificed on the altar of ending the very freedom of movement of people on which the EU itself is founded. Well, Conference, I think we all of us probably have news for the UK government, because this country didn't volunteer to have a Brexit referendum. This country voted to stay. And while Boris probably didn't think about Scotland very much in the course of the referendum, this country has a government who will make sure that Boris and Theresa May have to think about Scotland now.
Sorry, that was quicker than I'd anticipated. Thank you, Alistair. Robert Martin speak in favour of the remit back, and he'll be followed by Dr Angus MacLeod, who will speak for the resolution.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, Conference. Jamie Ross of BuzzFeed was looking for someone who'd been at conference who actually voted leave. Jamie, if you're still about, your search is over. I sensed a lot of understandable anger in the resolution before you, and a number of speakers have already commented about the faulty wording. I just want to say why I voted leave in the referendum. I'm not scared to admit it. 1 million of my fellow Scots also voted leave, amongst 17 million others, and excuse me if I don't feel overwhelmed by putting David Cameron out of number 10 Downing Street. I don't think this motion really considers properly what our relationship with the EU and Europe is in any shape or form. It ignores totally our relationship with the rest of the UK in trading terms, and therefore doesn't address the economic risks of disrupting our relationship with the rest of the UK in order to pursue a relationship with a smaller, effective export market in the rest of Europe. And for those of you who are also arguing that we are being dragged away from Europe, I just want to remind you of some of the terminology of some of the European presidents that came to give their opinion on the first independence referendum. We had José Manuel Barroso being very evasive. We have currently President Martin Schulz agreeing to see our First Minister only because it's part of his job remit to see other regional heads of government. And we also now had, at the time, Herman Count von Rompuy, who basically said at the time, you have to reapply to join the European Union as a third country if you become independent. They weren't exactly putting the welcome mat out for us. They were actually trying to slam the door in our faces. So let's try and understand and re-examine what our relationship with the EU should be before we hang it round the success or otherwise of a second independence referendum. I move the remit back.
Angus MacLeod, to be followed by Kelly Given.
Friends and fellow internationalists, despite what we've just heard, Scotland is and always has been an outward-looking internationalist country. 1,300 years ago, 1,300 years ago, the Abbey of Iona was promulgating laws which applied equally to Scotland and Ireland. International cooperation and international obligations did not start with our entry to the EU. Even the declaration of Arbroath is a declaration of sovereignty addressed to the head of a transnational institution based in Europe, the papacy. So Scottish sovereignty and Scottish independence have always had an internationalist context, despite what some of the speakers for the remit back have said. We are a European nation and we are proud of it. And just as Scots have travelled Europe and settled overseas, our European neighbours have arrived and been welcomed in our midst. There's not a family in these islands, I believe, that does not have European ancestry in it. So I am proud that this party and our party leader wasted no time in stressing that our newly arrived European citizens are a vital part of modern Scotland. Contrast this with the xenophobic rhetoric and totalitarian policies emanating from the darkest recesses of the Tory party. Let us be clear that any attack on the rights of our European Scots, our neighbours, our brothers and sisters, is an attack on all of us. I don't care if you're a Prime Minister, a Secretary of State, or a thug on the street. Any attempt to make Europeans feel unwelcome is an attack on a vital component of Scottish life and society. It is an attack on all of us. I will conclude conference by saying that there is not a corner of these islands that have not benefited from our EU membership. I have sat on the pier in the Outer Hebrides on Barra and watched the shellfish exporters sending their lorries to Spain and Portugal. I've sat in my department at the University of Glasgow and seen the contribution of EU and Erasmus students to our universities. Scotland must not be dragged out of Europe aboard the rust bucket royal yacht that is Brexit. Support the resolution and support our continuing efforts to do all that we can to stay in Europe, to stay internationalists, and maintain our place as a proud member of the European Community of Nations. Thank you very much.
Kelly Given, and if Alec Hoare and Tony Giuliano could be ready to sum up, please.
Conference. It's difficult to comprehend the last year in British politics. We've seen the once unrivalled Labour Party fall into the utter depths of despair. We've seen Boris Johnson selected to represent Britain overseas. And we've seen a Tory government, initially against the notion of Brexit, taking us exactly taking us headfirst into exactly that. Not only have they changed their stance on Brexit, Theresa May is determined to make us suffer in its aftermath. She is determined that a hard Brexit is the only way forward, but let her remember this. Firstly, the referendum mandated the government to take us out of the EU. It by no means gave the government a mandate to take Britain out of the single market. It by no means gave the government a mandate to leave EU citizens living and contributing to our country, feeding for their jobs and their homes. The reality is that Britain did not vote for the hard Brexit that the Tories insist on. They in fact voted for a Conservative manifesto in 2015 that stated, "We say yes to the single market." Scotland is obviously an exception here. We voted overwhelmingly to remain in the European Union, and we certainly did not vote for a Conservative government in 2015. Yet here we find ourselves in a so-called democratic United Kingdom, on a one-way, right-wing Tory UKIP train to financial chaos and broken international relations that we did not vote for. Theresa May seems to think that repeating the phrase "Brexit means Brexit" is going to convince Scotland that she means business. Well, Theresa May, I'll tell you today that in Scotland, remain means remain, and we also mean business. Independence is Coming conference, and I'd like to personally thank Theresa May for her cooperation with that. She's one of the best things to happen to our campaign since it began. Please support this resolution conference. Thank you.
Okay, conference, could I ask your permission to extend this session for another 10 minutes so we can finish this debate and also hear our final resolution in today's session? Thank you very much for that, conference. I'm sorry to all the other speakers, all the other people who put cards in. I can't take any more speakers. I hope that conference will agree that we have had a good length of time for this debate and that it has been a balanced debate. So I'm now going to move to the summing up. Could I ask Ali Kaur to come and sum up for the remit back, please?
Thanks very much, Conference, and I'm sure you'll agree that we've had a fantastic debate this afternoon. As someone who's battled for independence all my adult life, I, like you, desire independence with all my very being. However, I want to be absolutely sure when we go for a referendum that we win it, that all the arguments are in place. I don't want to see us rush enthusiastically headlong into another referendum when we actually have achieved what our Scottish Government may be seeking. The idea of a soft Brexit, maybe as far-fetched as it seems, may actually be achieved. But we will be out with the EU. We may have a deal secured that's actually proves very popular with the Scottish people, out with the EU. Do we then rush forward to have another independence referendum, even though the support of the Scottish people may not be with us on that because they support the deal that potentially our Scottish Government has secured? The vote today I may lose. I'm fully aware of it. But it would be remiss of me not to flag up the issues that this resolution outlines. And let's have a look at it, let's remit it back, and let's bring it back when we're actually more secure, we're more safer in what potentially will be achieved for Scotland, when that deal is more advanced and when we know what's actually on the table for our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, and can I have Tony Giuliano to sum up for the resolution, please? You've got 2 minutes, Tony.
Conference, it has been indeed a fantastic debate. I've just heard Ali Kaur saying, let's bring it back at some other point. Conference, I don't want to bring it back at some other point. I want to tell Theresa May now that remain means remain. I don't want to wait 2 months or 3 months down the line to give the reassurance to 170,000 EU nationals in this country, that reassurance that they're waiting for, that this party, that this country stands by them. Sending this motion back today, rejecting this motion back today, is a slap in the face to providing that reassurance to 170,000 people that want that reassurance now. So I appreciate that some people might not like some of the wording, and perhaps it's not strong enough in places. But this is an opportunity, and we cannot miss an opportunity at a time when the bargaining will begin in Brussels and in London. We need to make our position clear that Scotland will no longer be sidelined, that we will no longer be an afterthought on Westminster's agenda. And I just want to come back to a couple of points that have been made throughout the debate of a half-time. Remember our manifesto? We made it clear. Material change. Europe was one of them. This is a material change, and if we do not stay in Europe, we have the right to call an independence referendum to protect our national interest. That's what this is about. I also want to reiterate the work, and speaking after Mike Russell and also Fiona Hislop, are two ministers that are leading this engagement work in Brussels. I think that this is to accept this resolution, to move this resolution today, would be to also endorse the work that they are doing in Brussels, and I think it's absolutely crucial that we send that message to the Prime Minister from the banks of the Clyde all the way to the Palace in Westminster, that remain means remain. Thank you. Support the resolution.
Okay, conference, we're going to move to the vote. Can I reiterate that we did not receive any cards in to move a direct negative against the resolution?
You did.
No, I'm sorry, John, we didn't. We've got your card here, and your card here is to speak for the remit back. It is not to move the direct negative. Okay, you've seen your card, John. It's to move the remit back, and we took several speakers in favour of the remit back. So there is no direct negative to be voted on. Could you take your seat, John, so that we could move to the vote, please? It's okay. It's okay. Just take a seat and we'll move to the vote. You still have the opportunity to vote for the remit back if you choose to do so. Okay. I'll just let John take his seat and then we'll move to the vote. Okay, conference, could I see cards in favour of the remit back? And could I see cards against the remit back? The remit back falls. We move to the resolution. Can I see cards in favour of the resolution? Can I see cards against the resolution? The resolution is passed overwhelmingly. Okay, we're going to move to Resolution 17, to be moved by Roger Mullen MP and seconded by Alison Thewlis MP.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Conference, for giving a short extension to allow this resolution to be held. I will try and be briefer than I normally am to allow Alison to have a few words after me.
Sorry, Roger. Colleagues, if you're leaving the hall, could you do so as quietly as possible, please, so that our remaining speakers can be heard? Thank you. Sorry, Roger, carry on.
That's quite all right. Justice begins at home. We often hear that phrase. But justice doesn't have any borders and is not confined by geography. This is about justice we want to do to our fellow citizens in the poorest countries of the world. In a few weeks' time, I'm bringing forward in Westminster a private member's bill to deal with international tax justice. And I want to pay tribute to the help that I am receiving from that wonderful charity, ActionAid. Before I became an MP, I undertook 27 international assignments, mainly in the developing world for United Nations agencies. And I saw only too clearly the results of some old-fashioned tax treaties that the UK have had with some of the poorest countries in the world. Many of these tax treaties remain in place from the days of the Empire, and Alison will give an example of one. However, one of the most awful things is that since 1970, the United Kingdom, more than any other country in the world, has formed new tax treaties that do harm to developing world countries. Conference, we don't want to build a new Scotland on the backs of the poorest people in the world. That must be our message to the international community. What do these tax treaties do? They act on behalf of corporations to prevent the poorest countries in the world getting their proper due out of taxation. They make these countries continuing to be dependent. They deny them the resources to invest and become more self-sufficient. These are some of the most illogical but also immoral treaties that this United Kingdom government of both political persuasions in the past has formed with the developing world. Conference, I ask you to support this resolution.
Alison Pulis MP to second.
Thank you very much, Susan. My colleague and friend Roger Mullen has laid out in some detail the injustice being done by the UK to some of the poorest countries and some of the poorest people in the world. I would like to touch on a particular country which has strong links to Scotland, the country of Malawi, which I know is very dear to the heart of my good friend Patrick Grady, and he has done a lot of work on this with the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. Fellow delegates, companies in the UK are the third largest investor in Malawi, worth $170 million in 2010. But as a result of the 1955 tax deal, these UK companies pay little or no tax. Malawi's treaty is utterly outdated, so much so that it was signed by the British governor on behalf of Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia and Nyasaland. The impact of this deal, though, is felt most of all on frontline services within that country. This is money being robbed from the poorest people in the world with the endorsement of the UK government, and the impact is very real. Harriet Bunali, Executive Director of the National Organisation of Nurses and Midwives of Malawi, has said, "One nurse may be looking after 80 patients. They cannot manage to provide the quality care that is required because their workload is just too heavy. If big companies divert tax, they should know that they are killing people, because that money could have been used in so many ways: buying drugs, buying supplies, paying the nurses, paying the doctors." Conference, there is wide cross-party support in Scotland on this issue. Scotland is a leading example of the campaign for tax justice, and we will not rest until this wrong is righted. Conference, the Brexiteers are never done telling us how they want to open up to new markets around the world, but a very good start to opening up these markets would be a gesture of goodwill and a gesture of solidarity, rebuilding the trust of these countries around the world and scrapping these colonial relics to make tax fair. Conference, I very much look forward to the day that independent Scotland can reach out to the world and make its own deals. But until then, we must keep as much pressure on the UK government to scrap these tax deals and to make tax fair. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Conference, I have no cards in against this resolution. Can we pass it by acclaim? That's the end of our sessions for today, Conference. Have a great evening. See you all tomorrow.